Hello from Blue Willow Bookshop in Houston, Texas. My name is Kathy Berner, and I am the event coordinator at the shop. We are so excited to host this virtual event celebrating the release of When Grumpy Met Sunshine, Charlotte Stein's delightful new book. Charlotte will be in conversation with author Talia Hibbert. I am so excited for this. I can't begin to tell you. So please join me in welcoming Charlotte and Talia to the screen. There's Charlotte. There's Talia. You're both here. Wonderful. I'm so glad y'all are here. You two are going to talk, and then I'll come back in a while and I will serve as audience surrogate and ask y'all some questions. But have a great time chatting, and I'll see you later.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you. Talia, hello.
How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. How are you, my dear?
I'm good, thank you. I am full of cold, so apologies in advance if I'm spluttering everywhere, but doing well. Very excited.
Oh, I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you're okay.
Okay, so obviously we're here to discuss many things, I think, but first and foremost, When Grumpy Met Sunshine, which I read an early copy of, and then I think I just spent like the next several weeks after that screaming at you. Um, Am I remembering, like, did I send you emails like after every bit that I read? Because I seem to remember sending you terrible, terrible emails being like, oh my God, about one particular doing it again 10 minutes later, like a real problem in your
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you did make my life quite a bit by sending, by sending me multiple emails. Like there is nothing quite as wonderful as when somebody reads your book, especially someone as awesome as you, and just likes all the little bits in it, and will send you this bit was good, this bit was good. Yeah, it's wonderful. Which is, I have to say, it's a bit bad of me because when I read people's books, I just tend to just go ah and not mention any of the specific things that made me scream. It's terrible.
That means you're just in it. Like I wish I
Yeah,
could stop highlighting things and taking a minute to scream, but different
yeah,
brain.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I your books in particular, I just gallop through. I really do. I just hoover them up. So that's probably why. Yeah.
Well, it's so funny because I think you've said to me before, like, this is a rom-com, and I think we could say it's your first rom-com technically. Talked before about how your writing style just really naturally lends itself to this subgenre of romance because your books have always been so funny, like regardless of whether you were trying to do it or not.
It's
So,
true. I've got like serious books that people think of as serious. I think of quite dark and deep, I guess. But then I'll reread them. And I think, how did I get away with all this joking around?
that's wonderful though. No, that's wonderful. And I think that is like when you're just naturally funny, it's so effortless. But this time you were actively trying to write a rom-com. So what about that felt different from usual?
Oh, it's. Are you still there?
Yes, can
Oh,
you see?
it threw us a little bit then. What felt different about actually writing a rom com? It was just more freeing. I think it was just way more. It was more freeing. Like there's always a time when when I've written sort of very dark things, quite grim things, really. When you feel the pressure of not having any lightheartedness, of not having any kind of, and I'm quite a like silly cheery sort of person, so it's quite tough sometimes. Through my career, that's been quite difficult. And I've always wanted to have a break and write something a little bit funnier. So this was just it was very freeing. It was very me, I think, more than anything else. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So does that mean you're definitely going to be doing more like this?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I would love to. If I had my way, I'd be able to write stuff like this
Mm.
forever. I think that would be my hope. Mm.
'Cause also, what I found really interesting was that obviously Alfie is based on Roy Kent from Ted Lasso.
Mhm.
Uh, and I love that from when I first saw Ted Lasso, I very much thought like he and a lot of the characters in the show are such Charlotte Stein characters, especially Charlotte Harris. Do you know what I mean? Like just
Yeah,
Labrador soft guys doing their best.
100%. I remember for the longest time I didn't watch Ted Lasso, and everybody else was raving about it. And then I remember sort of watching it and thinking, oh my goodness, why did I take so long? This is so me. I think part of me was a little bit like, is this going to be disappointing because I want it to be so me?
Yeah.
And watched it and I was like, oh gosh, yeah, all these dudes are amazing and I love them. Yeah, for sure.
100%. Because you really like films and stuff, right? Because in a lot of your books, the characters make all these references, or there are like in the book itself references to like classic films and stuff.
Mhm.
I find it really interesting that you like based a character on media. So can you talk more about, I guess, the influence that that has on your books?
Yeah, I remember we've kind of talked about a little bit about this before. In fact, I found it so fascinating that because like usually most people I know actually do something similar to that, and you were the first person who was kind of really curious about it and like a bit like that's so strange. But yeah, it's the way that I have always done things. I suppose it's kind of um I want to say it's a bit like fanfic, a little bit that kind of whole fan fiction to publication, but it's not really for me because I don't tend to take the whole character. It's
Mm.
like one thing about a character or one thing they do or just something that sparks it that the real or often it'll be something like as well like with Roy and Keeley who never actually getting together in Ted Lasso. It's that feeling of like I want characters like that to have a happy ending. I want them to get that kind of joy and all the fun stuff, all the sex I guess as well. Yeah, so that's just how I've always done it, I guess. Yeah.
Because I think fan fiction and romance have that in common. Like, there's usually that massive overlap, right? Anytime you're reading fanfic, it's probably going to be romantic because I think a
Hmm.
lot of it comes from imaginations like ours, where you watch some media. So much media seems to be obsessed with people ending up like not happy at the end.
Exactly.
And you're like,
Exactly.
what? I've got to fix this.
That is exactly it. It is exactly it for me. It's just that kind of feeling of how often stuff finishes with like terrible, depressing people dead. Oh God, and you just think, like I remember I think it started for me a little bit with films like the movie Aliens with like Ripley and Hicks. And
Yeah.
like he ends up dead in the next movie and all this kind of stuff. And you just want them. I just wanted people characters like that to have a happy ending. I just want nice
Yeah.
things to happen to them. Yeah.
100%. Like they've gone through so much. Can they not have peace? Have they not earned it?
Exactly. And I feel like with fan fiction, a lot of fan fiction is that urge to just
Mm.
give characters a different ending, a different kind of piece,
Yeah.
something, just something else, I guess, dissatisfaction with the way that canon is. Mm.
And I wonder if, because obviously we're both British, and I wonder if our feelings on this are influenced by the fact that British media in particular is so grim. It's so miserable. And
It
it's
is, it
so
so is. Oh gosh, yeah. The amount of BBC dramas me and you have probably trawled our way through to utter misery. Yeah, absolutely so.
Why
It's
can no one be
okay.
happy? I spoke about this actually in February because not so much now. I feel like romance has had a real there's been a real change in respect for romance in the last few years, but I remember at one point, every Valentine's Day, we would, as romance authors and readers, wake up to like a post like, oh, romance novels ruining relationships and rotting your brain.
Yeah, I know. Gosh, yeah. At one point, it was really, really bad. I remember when I first started to sort of um do well in the romance genre, it just seemed like every 2 seconds there was some article. Why can't romance novels be terrible and grim and sad and it's like everything is like that. Everything is like that. Can romance novels just be nice and happy and have a love story in them? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God. Like getting hit in the face with a wet kipper every Valentine's Day. Just terrible articles about it. Yeah.
Okay, so I know that because you've written so many books, which is great for those of us like me who read one of your books and became addicted forever and had to go and find more. I know that this is your first book for a little while, but I also know that you've been writing and you have lots of other stuff up your sleeve. I'm sure the good people are very interested to hear more about that if you're willing to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, well, after this book, there's another 2 books coming in this contemporary series, and one of them, the next one is my big fat fake marriage, and that's going to be, and
Love
that's
it.
going to be with Mabel's editor, who is very Ted Lasso-ish, very Steve Rogers-ish, Clark Kent-ish, and Mabel's best friend as well, who's a bit of a, she's fun-loving and a bit of a flake, and doesn't think that she's got much substance to her. So I'm working on that at the moment, just finishing that up, and then there'll be the 3rd book, which is While You Were Seething, and that's going to be and that's going to be I've not quite decided yet exactly who the characters are, but that's coming after that. And then in between those things, there's my paranormal series, which 1st of October will be How to Help a Hungry Werewolf, and then it'll be demon and vampire, I think. Yeah.
I'm so excited because I have gotten a glimpse a couple of those and they were excellent.
Yeah, I think, what have oh gosh, I think have you read some of Demon? I think you have. Did I send you a bit of Demon? I think
Yes,
so.
and it stays with me. It stays with me to this day, and I'm waiting impatiently. Oh.
Yeah, well, Demon is still going to be the same thing that you've probably seen, so that's quite exciting. Yeah, yeah. And Werewolf is all done. That's all ready to go. I'll probably be doing the whole arc thing soon with that.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So, having read some of those, the fact that you're sort of moving into paranormal has not changed what makes a fundamental Charlotte Stein romance and also a Charlotte Stein hero, which I feel is a very special breed of romance. You talk more about how you come up with these characters and this like very unique voice and approach that you have.
I think, well, for me, like I think we've just spoken about, is that my heroes are very particular. I like a certain type of hero. I like a hero, no matter how sort of grim my hero seems, or mean, stoic, grumpy, whatever else. I like them to have that kind of like heart of gold, that soft center. I like that to be slowly revealed through the narrative, and like in Hungry Werewolf, he kind of bullied her a little bit in high school, the main character, and there's kind of some, and he sort of comes back into her life after about, I think it's about 5 years, and he's a werewolf now. And she's a witch, and she kind of gets roped into helping him and learns things about why he did the things he did, and it's revealed that he's a bit of a himbo underneath the sort of the exterior.
And it's so interesting that there's that theme or that trope of like he used to bully her, because I don't know if I've ever told you this, but how I discovered your books was I was on Twitter and I saw someone talking about Never Sweeter, which is a bully romance, or dare I say it, the bully romance. They were like, this is a bully romance. It's my favorite book of all time, 10 out of 10, no notes. And I was like, that's impossible, because I was bullied and I was like, I'm just not going to enjoy that. Awful. I'm not interested. And then sometime later, someone said to me, like a reader said to me, your books really remind me of Charlotte Stein. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, let me go and check her out. Who is that? Oh my God, it's the bully romance woman. And then I thought, okay, I should probably check it out actually. And what do you know? The Twitter person was right, because Never Sweeter is one of my favorite books of all time. And it's so incredibly done, perfectly done. I just don't know anyone else who could do that. I'm in shock and awe and astonishment eternally still. I read it literally like 6 years ago, and every time it comes up, I'm like, ah. So, all that to say, if you are watching this and you haven't read Never Sweeter, please correct that. And I'm very excited to see you take this on again in a paranormal setting. What made you actually, now we're talking about it, what made you decide to write paranormals?
The thing is, my first love is probably paranormals, I think, beyond anything else. Um, it's the kind of thing that I love to watch, like True Blood, all that kind of thing, What We Do in the Shadows. It's the kind of thing that I've just always adored, I guess. I love stuff like that. I love witchy stuff. I love werewolves, vampires, demons, all that stuff. I'm absolutely bonkers for. But it's the kind of thing where, for the longest time in romance, it's been incredibly difficult to ever publish anything like that. Like even self-publishing, it just would not go in. It was really, really tough. And it was only when things like Erin Sterling's The X-Hex, is that the title? Is it? Yeah. It's only when stuff like that started to really take off and it sort of combined with rom-coms and all that kind of thing that it's really kind of become its own thing. And I just thought, well, I've got to get in on that. I've got to write stuff like that. I love it.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way. It feels so freeing, this like place that we're at the minute, where suddenly we have all these subgenres that were out of vogue for so long. I grew up watching like Charmed and Buffy, and I was super into that as well. And then, you want to write books like that, but like you said, for a while there, it just wouldn't have worked.
No.
And now everything's changed. And what was I reading the other day? I was reading Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairy. I think that's what it's called.
Oh yeah, I love that book so much.
Right? It's so good. And
oh my gosh.
When you think about the fact that it's a historical, but also sort of like low fantasy, because she's an academic, she's a Cambridge academic, but she studies fairies, and that's a thing. Like fairies are accepted as a thing, and it's just so unique. And
she just makes it work. It's amazing. It's like I just absolutely loved that she kind of created this whole world that just seems so natural and organic, like it really has always been the case. And then just the nitty gritty of her getting to it, like the way that she investigates things and the cottage and the atmosphere. And oh god, I absolutely ate that book up. That was one of my favorite books of last year, easily.
I was so slow to read it. I literally just read it this year, and I remember seeing the cover everywhere and being like, oh, that looks so cute, and not getting it. And now I'm like, why, Talia?
I do that all the time. I did that with Murderbot.
Oh my god, another incredible series.
Yeah. With Murderbot, I remember seeing the covers and thinking, oh, that looks, no, that's going to be like that boring robo-apocalypse thing. No, I'm not interested. And then I read it, I was like, this is the greatest book of all time. Oh my god.
Murderbot, if you haven't read Murderbot, please just do it. You won't regret it. It's not a romance. And usually I don't read anything that's not a romance, but 10 out of 10. What else have you been reading lately? I'm trying to think what I've been reading. So many good books.
I have actually just, the reason I brought up Murderbot, I've been rereading Murderbot, which is something that I rarely do. I've been rereading Murderbot, and I've been reading, those Amazon short stories that they keep doing, those series. I don't know if you've seen them, the original shorts with different people doing them. I've been reading them. They're fantastic. I love them.
Oh, really? Because I downloaded one the other day. I haven't read it yet because the list of books I'm supposed to be reading right now is so long, and I just like, oh, what's that book over there? And like ignoring.
Same. Yeah. I read. I think it's called the Far Reaches collection that I read, and I thought, oh, I loved that. That was really good.
Okay, I'll check that out. Fun. Oh, I'm so bad at remembering book titles though.
I know. Me too. And on the spot as well, I'm like, what have I just read? Yeah. Oh, I know. I read What Is Love by Jen Comfort as well. That's upcoming soon, and that was fantastic. You'll love that. You will love that, Talia. You will.
I can see some people in the chat are not sure about the first book we were talking about. It's called, don't quote me on this, but it's called Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Is that right?
I think that's it.
I feel like if you search Emily Wilde, it'll come up.
It will, for sure. I think for the longest time I thought that was the name of the author. Which it could be. I don't know. But yeah, no. You'll easily find it. It's very, I think is the second book come out yet? I need to read that.
I saw a picture of the second book on the back of the first book, so I want to say yes.
Maybe. I'm gonna have to investigate. It's probably I probably pre-ordered it and it's waiting for me on my
Yeah,
Kindle.
it's bringing it in.
Okay,
Also,
I'm speaking as a voice from above. In the US, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies is available in paperback, and Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Lands released in hardcover last month.
Oh, right,
okay,
I'm reading now. That's next.
fantastic. Okay, so now that you've been writing paranormal, again, another sort of like mini subgenre hop, how does that feel different from rom-com, from the contemporaries you've been doing?
Mm, I think weirdly, I thought I would find it harder because
Yeah.
there's all the world building and all that kind of stuff. But I weirdly found it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Just simply because there's so much going on, and so there's always like the hardest thing with me for writing sort of like contemporary romance is the transition scenes, is like sort of getting from one event to the next. I find that very, very difficult. But with a paranormal, I find it much easier because there's always just something
Yeah.
that's going into the next. I found it easier, generally
Yeah.
speaking.
Sense because I've actually been writing something similar, sort of like romantasy, and I also expected to find it harder. And in some ways, I suppose I have. But one thing that I found easier was, in a contemporary or especially in a rom-com, it can be hard to set up really juicy, fulfilling stakes
Mhm.
because it's like, you can't exactly say, oh, if they fail, they'll die. I mean, you
Yeah,
you
it's
could if
true.
you
It's
like,
true.
I don't know, mafia romance or something like that. But in a paranormal or in a romantasy, it's much easier to be like, and the consequences are death.
Absolutely. And like even in something like a mafia romance or something, at the end of the day, it's still mundane reality.
Yeah,
It's still very much like the police might come any moment. It's still very kind of a little bit boring. Whereas, like you say, in romantasy and paranormal romance, it's like anything could happen at any time, especially when you've created a world where there's like monsters, goblins, whatever else. It's very, very like, oh gosh, anything could turn up. Anything, it really kind of opens things up. I think for sure.
I think that's why, because obviously we were just talking about how there has been that shift in romance where people are accepting everything else in the way they were before, the paranormal, the romantasy.
Mm.
And do you think it's because we have all become more easily bored since the pandemic, or like we're just sick of life?
Yeah, do you know what? I really do. I really think you're onto something there. I think it is just people are tired of the grind of reality. I think people just want that escape. They really do. I definitely think, in particular, that is why romantasy is really taking off and becoming a thing because it's just so just a, such. I personally love that genre. I love the idea of what they're doing with that in that space, and I just love the idea of just being able to just take off to other worlds. I guess it's just
Yeah,
wonderful. It
100.
speaks to all my childhood loves of like portal fantasies. You step
Yeah.
into a different world. Yeah, and
And
I'm really excited that you're potentially putting a toe into that space.
thank you. It's very exciting. So I like you have been a nerd for the longest, just like hoping that someone will let me write something like that. But
Yeah.
the interesting thing about romance is I feel like it's so natural to have paranormal romance or romantasy because romance already is kind of like a fantasy world in itself. Like even if you
Hmm.
do crack open a rom-com, and When Grumpy Met Sunshine is a perfect example of that, it's just like a micro fantasy. It's a whole new world, and you create such very intense worlds in your contemporary romances. Like in this book, for example, there are other characters but you're so immersed in the tension and the connection between Alfie and Mabel that you don't really think about it. It's like you're just desperate to jump back into their bubble, which I think is one of the great things about a great romance, right? It really sweeps you off your feet.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, all my favorite romances, including yours, are ones that have that kind of uh, almost intense focus on like the central romance, the real romance of it. I think often, you know, there'll be some romances that have the tendency to go off on tangents and lots of subplots and things like that. And I crave the central character. That's where it is for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's and it's like I said, it's what I love about your books. I think that you really nail that every single time. Like it's like I've said it earlier on in the chat that your books really kind of suck me in, and that's one of the main reasons why they suck me in, because you have that great focus on the main characters, and you make them not only the focus of everything, but also like it feels so natural that it should be the focus of them. It never feels like, oh, I need to know what's going on here. You don't need to. You nail that kind of.
Thank you so much. And that's so funny, because everything you just said could have been how I felt about your books. And it brings me back to that one person saying to me, like, your books really remind me of Stein. And then when I went and read one of your books, I was like, thank you so much. Everything
My
I'm
goodness.
for.
Can you imagine if you hated it? Oh, what an insult. No, but I honestly think part of the reason why I first read your book was that somebody said to me,
Really?
"Oh, yeah, I'm certain that somebody said to me, Talia's books are like your books, or like there's something about your writing that's similar." And when I read them, I was like, "Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, I get it. Yeah."
You're really drilling in there. Do you think also though it's because like we are both English and we're from, I suppose a lot of books that are set in England are very southern, very like London based, and well, your books have a really interesting place thing going on in that, because your books feel like films or sometimes even like music videos, like a Taylor Swift music video or something like that. It's like, I don't know where I am, but I'm having a great time. But but I feel like we are both very English in the way that we write, even when the characters aren't always.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think part of the reason why our books seem quite similar, or our style or whatever seems quite similar, is just because we've got quite similar sensibilities in terms of where we come from. And I mean, we live like how far away from each other? It's like an hour or something.
Yeah, not very.
No. So I just think we understand the same sort of points of reference and the same sort of like you were talking earlier about, the kinds of things we've watched on telly and stuff. It's definitely informed the way that we think about things and the way we write, I think. Yeah.
And another thing I loved about this book actually was like Alfie being so rich. And that's one of the really interesting things about football, is because in this country, there's like so few ways for someone who wasn't born rich to become rich. And being a footballer is basically the number one way.
Yeah.
And him having that experience and talking about it and being like, my house looks like this because I don't know how to spend money.
Yeah. I grew up working class. I completely immersed in that kind of culture of a lot of lads trying to get out of poverty essentially with football. That was the dream for so many lads that I grew up with, and so it was very easy to kind of like make that connection with Alfie and kind of like write that kind of character, the kind of lad that I would have known in school, essentially, just like in the book. Yes. Yeah.
I see Kathy's here.
I'm hovering. We've got some great questions. First of all, I read Neversweeter 9 billion years ago and like literally almost fell off my bouncy chair when I made the connection.
Oh, no.
I can't believe, I'm like, how did I not know this? As soon as this is done, I'm texting my sister to be like, oh my God. Anyway. Also, please note, in honor of your book, I am drinking from a Richmond Greyhounds mug.
Hooray!
I'm so excited for all that you have to come. Talia, so you've been talking a little bit about romantasy.
Yes.
Is there anything more specific you could say?
I'm being annoyingly vague, sorry, because there's not a lot I'm allowed to say right now because things aren't super official and announcy, but I am working on a romantasy, and I have a few more up my sleeve also, so keep an eye out. I hope I'll be able to say more soon.
That is amazing, and congratulations. I'm very excited for you.
Thanks.
And also on the note of how to help a hungry werewolf, I am hopeful that Blue Willow will be one of the stores that has pre-order goodies. Will they be as cute as this card? I
Oh,
don't know.
I'm already planning it. I'm already planning it.
But just so friends, watch this space for more. But let's switch to some questions. Here is one from Laura for both of you. How do you decide on character names? Do you pick baby name generators? Do you use acquaintances who have wronged you? How do you make the choice? Let's go Charlotte and then Talia.
I never knew that. What for me, it is always somehow a character just often walks into my head with the name. That's basically what it is. And if they don't, I find it extremely frustrating. I spend a long time kind of like going back and forth on it. Yeah, but I never use like name generators and things like that. It's just there.
Yeah. Oh,
How about you, Talia?
So it's funny actually because the heroine of When Grumpy Met Sunshine is called Mabel, which is my grand's name. And when I saw that, I was like, oh no, will I not be able to like disassociate the names? But I did because she was so herself. But for me, unfortunately, my characters are not so helpful as to pop up with names. I usually sort of think, where are they from? And more importantly, like what sort of names would their parents be likely to give them? And also, does this name sound right for the character? And I'll think, I want them to have like a gothic name or a name that means peace. And then I'll go on Pinterest and I'll type like baby name that or whatever.
See, that's a much more sensible way to do it. Me, I'm just like, all this, that's the end of it.
My way wastes a lot of time. It's a great procrastination tool. So
I love that for both of you. Here is one from Maria, who is very excited, Charlotte, to have a book from you. And this is for both of you. Do you have a set daily routine when you're actively writing a book or a collection of short stories? Let's start with Talia this time.
I'm glad you clarified, do I have a set routine when I'm actively writing? Because a lot of the time I'm trying to write and it's not quite working out and there's no routine. But my goal is always to carve out like days at a time to write because I do much better when I can be in it for a long time. And so on those days, I will wake up and I'll have my laptop by my bed and I won't do anything else. I'll just pick up my laptop and write until I start to get bored. And then when I get bored, I get up, I have breakfast, I bop around, and then in the afternoon, I go back to the writing. So it's kind of loose, but I try to make it sort of the first place that I put my energy, because I don't have a lot of energy.
How about you, Charlotte?
I'm so glad that you said that, Talia, because that's almost exactly what I do, and I always feel a bit weird about it because everybody else, like, well, I get up and I have my coffee and then I go to my desk, and I'm like, no, I have my iPad next to me. I just reach for it, and I just, I've carved out some time, and I just go for as long as I can until I'm like starving and haven't, been to the bathroom for a million years. Yeah, I write on my iPad, which makes it, and part of the reason why I write on my iPad is because it makes it even easier to just pick it up and write, and that's what I need. Yeah, it's almost exactly the same for me.
Remove all barriers to entry, otherwise I'm not gonna...
That is it, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I went from using a laptop with Word, and then I moved to my iPad with Word, but even Word on my iPad was not good enough. It was not quick enough. And now I'll do Pages on Word because you just open it really fast and there's no barrier. That's it.
I love that for both of you. Here's one from Ginger, who says, I immediately picked up on the Roy Kent vibes from Alfie, but his murder face also reminded me of Zaf Ansari. Do either of you chuckle over your leading men's murder faces?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the best part is when I suppose this applies to people and characters, when you know that someone is so sweet, but they just look like they want to kill you.
That's my favorite. Gosh, I love any character in TV that I write or anything like that has a murder face that looks like a brute, like the worst person in the world, but underneath they're like a little bait cradling rabbits and like Baking biscuits. Love that.
That is amazing. Here's one from Karen. Do you have any advice on writing transitions? They can be difficult. And when you get stuck, how do you get unstuck? Apparently you make faces. Talia, let's start with you and then do Charlotte.
So my thing for transitions is I tend to just jump from place to place because I too hate transitions. And then when I'm going back over it, some places it'll be like, there is a gaping hole here that we need to do that. But other places it's like, oh, I think I got away with that. So my answer is I try to avoid it. A lot of the time you don't need as much as you think, sometimes, especially physical transitions, I'll be like, and then they walked to the front door and left the house and went down the street to go to their next location. And then in hindsight, I'm like, you didn't need to say that.
No.
And as for getting unstuck, I like to do like activities that make your hands or your body busy, but your mind doesn't have to focus on, like washing up or going for a walk, that sort of thing. And then I find that things sort of percolate in the back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my answer is almost identical again. I don't know. Yeah, my transition scenes, I'll skip them generally. If I'm really struggling with them, I will just skip them, leave a hole, and try and come back and fill it in. And exactly like you too, I find that sometimes I overwrite them. Too much stuff, you don't need it. And I think sometimes it's a case of like, just end the scene, cut it off, and start a new scene as if, and you can easily cover what was what has happened in between just in a sentence, and I think that works super well. And you said something else as well that I thought, yeah, that's but yeah, no, that's what I do with transition scenes. That's how I get past them. Just try and ignore them as long as possible.
I think only write interesting things, only write things that interest you.
Yeah, it's true. Like the writing goes so fast when you're writing something that's fun and you're really into, and when you get into then they have to go down the street and in the door, and oh god, it's awful. It's awful. So you're not alone, person who asked that question. You're not alone at all.
Here's one from Nicole. First of all, actually, it's a comment, but it's a nice comment, so I'm sharing it. They have appreciation for how Talia writes chronically ill and neurodiverse characters in a very present and authentic way.
Thank you.
And Nicole also appreciates the compassion that both of you bring to your characters.
Aww.
And I think that is pretty lovely. Like,
yeah,
your characters have complications, but you are so generous. Both of you are so generous to your characters that it makes it easier for us as a reader to embrace them.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier about how we want happy endings for people, and especially for people like us, I guess. Like for characters who have these struggles and have, who are neurodivergent, who have, all kinds of things that they've got to deal with. And I just, you get tired of characters like that, especially getting the short end of the stick in media. And we obviously both don't want to see that anymore. No.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. This is from Rennie, who, by the way, is logging in from Lagos, Nigeria. This is my first Lagos person, so I'm very excited. She says hi. They know you're active on Twitter, but who are your favorite erotica and romance writers who inspired you to start writing?
Ooh, to start writing. Okay, so do you want to go first, Charlotte?
So what was the question again? The romance authors that inspired
erotica and romance authors who inspired you to start.
Okay, I would say Emma Holly was my big inspiration. Emma Holly, 100%. I'm still very sad that she's not with us anymore. Because I owe her almost everything in terms of like starting to write romance and stuff. She wrote for the line Black Lace, and that's where I got my start. And just still to this day, there is hardly anyone who writes sex the way that she did. Just a wonderful, wonderful writer. Emma Holly.
I think for me, I started, so the big difference for me was that growing up, I was reading books from my local library, and I live in a super white small town. I mean, it used to be a village, but we've been upgraded to a town. Um, so all the romance I found was just white people. And then when I got to an age where well, first of all, where Kindles were like the thing, and second of all, I could have my own debit card and order books on the internet. I can search for romance with Black people, and I did, and it was a whole new world. And I remember like Theodora Taylor and Whitney G, and also like Alicia Rai, who is not Black, but she's South Asian. And I was like, this is so like I can see myself here. And it inspired me because up until that point, I had thought if I do want to be a writer, which I always did, I had thought I should probably write white characters because obviously that's the only way to get published because I can't see anything else. But then all of a sudden I had access to these books and it's like, oh, I can just write people like me and it'll work out. So yeah, that was great.
I can't tell you how lovely it is for me to hear that, because one of the things that's so important to us is showing the diversity of the Houston area on our shelves, and to know that you found that makes me really happy.
Me too.
Here's one from Jess for both of you. Are there any little or private jokes that you put in your books for yourself and your friends?
Huh.
Charlotte, you want to start?
No, I would maybe. I wouldn't say like I think that some people, like to say to make characters who are based on someone secretly and things like that. But I kind of always get really nervous about doing stuff like that. I get very, very nervous. So I wouldn't say so, but I would say there are things that I joke about in my books that will probably be only funny to people who are my friends or very, very like me, I guess.
I think an unintentional joke in my books has become that. So I have lived a relatively boring life, which I'm completely happy with, but I have people around me who, for whatever reason, have really interesting lives. And my fiance especially is always having things happen to him, and I steal those things to put in my book. And then, someone will mention it. I'm like, in my last release, Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute, I don't want to spoil anything, but a character has a fall, and that exact situation, it's a very specific situation, happened to my fiance when he was a kid. And when he heard that it was in the book, he was like, will you stop stealing my life? Thing, grow up.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Let me go here. Okay, here's one from Noel. Curious about how you approach different heat levels in different stories.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like, Charlotte, do you feel like you have different heat levels?
uh, yeah, kind of. Yeah, I would say that I do, and I would say it just to me it's always dictated by the story, really. But I mean, to some extent, when I used to sort of write for very, very erotic lines, you had to get a certain level of heat in there, and I found that quite difficult. I think I prefer to sort of let it be dictated by the characters, and that's what suggests the heat level. Like with When Grumpy Met Sunshine, it was very much the case that it felt like a slow burn that would then build and build and explode. With the one I'm writing now, it's a little bit hornier, I guess, a tiny bit, but it's because of the type of characters. It's the type of characters are quite. One of them's quite inexperienced and a bit repressed. So that's just how it happens, I guess. Yeah.
That's interesting because I'm a big fan of Alexis Hall, and I read like several of his books, and there were varying, yeah, the mug. There were varying heat levels, but it none of them got particularly explicit, like they were either fade to black or it would be like, and now they're having sex, but it would be kind of poetical, brief descriptions. And so I was going on a family holiday and I knew I was going to be on an airplane next to one of my sisters who was 12. And I had a new book from him, and I was like, this is fine. I can just read it next to her and it's going to be fine. And all of a sudden,
Oh no! Oh no!
it was not fine. And I was like, what has she seen? She was not paying attention, thank God. But I turned the page and I was like, bam, okay. And then I actually went on his website just because I'm a fan and I was poking around. And I saw that in his FAQ, I guess people ask him all the time, like, how come your books have different heat levels? And he said exactly what you said, Charlotte, that it's just
Really?
dictated by the story and the characters. Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
makes perfect sense, I think. For me, I find it really difficult to grasp or judge the heat levels in my books. Like sometimes people will say to me, wow, this book was a lot. And I'm like, oh, was it? Because I guess I
Yeah.
was just vibing with the story.
Yeah. No, it's the same thing. Like but people will say this is like a 5 alarm story, and I'll be like, I don't think it. I didn't think that it was. But then other people will find it. You can never predict the chili peppers, I guess.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly. And we are going to wrap with one question before I ask our final question. This one is from Sarah. What is your favorite underused trope that you would love to see more often?
Oh
Marriage of
no.
Convenience.
I see. all my favorites are overused.
So
I
then what are your favorites?
My favorites are well, Grumpy Sunshine, obviously, fake dating, obviously. I would say fake dating is probably my number one. Fake dating, I've always adored it. If I'm reading fan fiction and someone's written fake dating, I'm there. Give me it. Yeah, they're my favorites.
I think one of these is like a micro trope, and it's one that you do a lot, Charlotte, but it's where there's like a misunderstanding that one of the characters thinks that for whatever reason the other character is repulsed by them.
Yeah.
But in reality, the other character is super interested and like super embarrassed about it. And
Yeah.
so the character will be like, oh, I'm sorry I bothered you with my horrible muscles. You do
That's
that a
my
lot.
favorite. No, I'm changing my answer. That's my favorite.
I love it. And then my other one is Marriage of Convenience, which is really hard to slide into a contemporary. But that's just another point in favor of romantasy and also historicals. I love historical romance with Marriage of Convenience.
Me too. Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the best. That is awesome. Y'all, I am so full of joy. I do not want to go back to the store, even though it is Valentine's Day, which makes me really happy. I would rather stay here for another 4 hours and talk with you, but then it would be late and I need to let you guys get your rest. Thank you to everyone who joined us. And thank you to Talia and Charlotte for creating such great books and for giving of your time. Let's wrap with Blue Willow's favorite question, which is tell us a book of your heart. And Talia, let's start with you.
Okay, so I love this question because you can have so many books of the heart, whereas it's hard to choose a favorite, right? And right now, I feel like This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan, which I read an early copy of, is a book that has been on my mind ever since I read it because it's very much a romance, but it's also really kind of a heroine's journey. And it's just such a, like all Kennedy Ryan's books, it's just such a juicy emotional story. It has all the like thrills that I want to see in a romance, but it also brings me like such interior depth in the lead. And I love that combination. So yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, she's the best.
Wonderful. How about you, Charlotte?
I picked something that sort of kind of set me on my journey, I guess, as a writer, which was The Vampire Diaries by L.J. Smith. It's one of the first books that I ever thought I could write something like this. I want to write something like this. And I remember my dad bringing home a green hardback book, a notepad. He brought it home from work because they were throwing them away. And I filled the whole thing with my version of Vampire Brothers, I guess. And just it was just I've never forgotten it. I thought I'd written a whole novel, and I think it was about 7,000 words long in total. Yeah, and it was just that's what started me my journey to be a writer, I guess.
Well, we're grateful that you read that and that your father brought that green notebook home.
Me too. Me too.
That is wonderful. Everyone, thanks so much for joining us. Again, if you want the super cute card, purchase When Grumpy Met Sunshine from Blue Willow Bookshop. Caroline's thrown that in the chat a couple times. We'll send it to you as a follow-up email. Probably not tomorrow. Maybe early in the week. And just because both Charlotte and Talia mentioned him, we are hosting a virtual event with Alexis Hall next Saturday to celebrate Waiting for the Flood. And late breaking news, there will be a spoiler discussion at the end of the event. So if anybody wants to discuss it, that would be great. But all of that is on our website. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you to St. Martin's for making this possible. We're just so grateful that both of your books are in the world. It makes us really happy.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you so much. And thank you, Talia, as well. This was absolutely amazing. I cannot thank you all enough. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun, and I'm just so thrilled to be involved because I just really love this book. So
it's the best. All right, y'all. Have a great afternoon, evening, morning. Have a great time zone wherever you are.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.